right. Okay, so we're live on Facebook, so this is going to be with you, the viewer, a nice little experiment for us because we are going to do, yeah, or just turn I got it, I think. Yes, sweet, I know how to work that type of computer. So, let us know you're here. As per usual, looks like some of you guys are streaming in, so we are Green Juju. This is the Kelly Marion, the owner of Green Juju and founder.
And the pet nutrition guru.
So, let me see here. Now we're going live on Instagram. So if you have Instagram, we are also live on Instagram, I believe. Let's see, I have to turn this down. So let us know if there's some kind of issue here. We're going to see more of the comments from people on Facebook, I believe. So we're excited to be here today. So a couple times a year, me and Kelly get together and go over all the fun things that happened this year with Green Juju, and also Kelly gets to text while we're on lives. I mean, it's amazing.
Sorry.
So we get to talk about all the great things that are coming up next year, and all those things. So very, very excited to, have had a great 2022 and obviously continuing on. The year's not over yet. And so today, before we take your questions, and hi to all the people who are saying hi on both Instagram and Facebook here. And also, if you don't catch this for some reason, or you want to see it afterward, we do post these to Facebook as well, to YouTube, which would be a really great opportunity for you to follow our YouTube as well. So looks like Carly loves the pork bites, which is really, really good to hear. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the microbiome. So I feel like this is like a cool, vindicating thing for you, Kelly, because before we talk about the benefits of plants and how they work with the microbiome, why don't you talk about your first experiences? And by the way, for you out there, I'm surprising her with this. So why don't you talk about...
I'm great on the fly.
Why don't you talk about your first experiences when you first introduced Green Juju and started telling people that you were going to feed, that their dogs should eat plants for better health?
Well, it started with my dog Bailey, who had a rare joint cancer, and we didn't have a lot of great conventional treatment options. And the good thing about the cancer was that it was locally aggressive but slow to spread. So we had some time to kind of experiment with things. And I was working with a conventional vet and a holistic vet, and I was doing a ton of research on my own. Some of the research that I came across was talking about feeding plants to animals. I had been doing a lot of juicing, smoothies, whole food kind of stuff for my own health issues at the time. And combination of the research that I had done, talking to my holistic vet, and my own experience in how these plants were helping reduce inflammation and detoxify and all of these other things that I knew that Bailey needed, I decided to try and basically give my juice to her, but kind of catered more towards what she needed with the guidance of my vet and a canine nutritionist. And I knew why I was doing it for Bailey, and I had a dog walking business at the time, and all of my clients were kind of curious, and so I started giving what turned into Green Juju to all my clients, and we started hearing these different feedback of they're shedding less, or they have more energy after the park, or their poop is better, or they're not eating poop, or a whole range of things that got me to go back into the research more and figure out why are these things happening. And that was 10 years ago, and there wasn't a whole lot of research on it. So it's super exciting today to see that there are actual studies on why we should be feeding plants to dogs and what it's doing to help them.
Well, and I think there are some people, who are skeptical about that in the beginning. And so it always, when you're a trendsetter, it always, I think people always look upon things very skeptically, maybe when they, shouldn't necessarily do that. And so I just think it's really cool to have seen this development over those years. So now we can talk about, this is just really one aspect of what makes, our blends particularly so healthy, is how they're going to affect the microbiome. So this isn't even necessarily going into a lot of the other things like antioxidant content and vitamins and minerals. One of the best things, first of all, about what we do at Green Juju is everything is so multifaceted. So it's not just do this as a probiotic. It's this works as a probiotic and for antioxidants and for fiber and all these different things. And so this is really just the tip of the iceberg. So the first thing to think about here is what is the microbiome? So and I will say this as well. All the information that you're going to hear on this live today is from our friends over at Animal Biome, who do really great microbiome testing and fecal transplants and have some really great stuff going on over there. And they are, yeah.
I just want to say I've used their products with my Frenchie, who's almost 13, numerous times, and they are just absolutely transformative. There's no other supplement I've ever used before that has made such a big difference for her. So if you're having any kind of skin, gut, any issues, it's worth looking into.
Yeah, and they are really the experts when it comes to having identified species of bacteria and looking at amounts of bacteria and really, all the health indicators that come with those bacteria. So they were nice enough. Holly, who's the lead scientist over there, was nice enough to send us over some information to go over with you guys on this and how it would apply to some things that we're doing at Green Juju, which I think is really exciting. Because, a lot of times we need to, it's kind of a funny thing to verify what we all know, which is that fresh, and unprocessed foods are better for mammals than not. But it is really cool to be able to get some, studies and information when it comes to this stuff. So, so the gut microbiome is a community of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that make up your gut and basically digestive system. And those microorganisms, as we found out through research now, have a way of communicating with other parts of the body as well. So it doesn't just come down to how is my dog's digestion, how does their poop look. It comes down to a lot of other factors like supporting brain function, protecting the heart, supporting longevity in terms of, in relation to gene expression and things like that. Maintains a healthy gut, which, as we know, is really, the starter for all. What's that?
It keeps popping up.
Oh, I know. The starter for all of the health overall in the body. Maintaining healthy skin and coat, which really is important, but it's really just kind of the first indicator for what's going on in the body. And then supporting the immune system, which is one of the things that I'll mention here on coming up shortly, which obviously is very important, and then maintaining a healthy weight. So what you find is that when you have dogs on a low carbohydrate diet that include our blends, it's gonna be much, much easier to maintain a healthy weight. So it's a great way to get plants into the diet. So first, that's kind of the first thing. So
that was one of the reasons that I started doing this. I mean, all of the benefits of plants, but also the fiber. Adding that to Bailey's diet helped keep her full. And I've also noticed back with those dog walking clients, I had a lot of golden retrievers, and as many of you probably know, they can eat forever. The fiber really helped keep them satiated and not jumping at treat bags all day long.
Exactly. And having a French bulldog now, I know about keeping the dog full because he can eat anything all the time. So the way you want to look at what we're sort of talking about when it comes to gut bacteria and how we're going to affect this gut bacteria through Green Juju products is there's basically your gut bacteria, and then there's a protective layer of mucus, and then there's your intestinal cells. And it's the mucus part of that where sort of all of the nutrients and things that you're eating and things that are processed in the gut by those good bacteria go through to get to sort of the intestinal cells to be able to get into your body, to be able to be digested, or your dog or cat's body, to be able to do that. So what we're actively trying to do here is to maintain the best microflora to be able to positively affect the body the whole body, and that's sort of how it affects that part of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the very interesting thing is when your dog or cat eats a highly processed diet that is low in fiber or simple carbohydrate diet, like a lot of the processed foods on the market, you are going to starve out the microbes in the gut because they don't have enough food, which will actually reduce the mucus lining between the intestinal cells and those bacteria, which you need to have typically a thicker mucus lining, or else you're talking about something like leaky gut and those types of things. So we need to make sure that we're feeding the gut microbiome with a high fiber diet, which that's really the first introduction into our blends. Because the other thing that's really interesting is we know now through studies that there's greater microbiome diversity or good bacteria growth and diversity with more plants in your dog or cat's diet. So the other interesting thing what's that?
The comment that says, "Ew, I just joined when you said mucus."
Oh, good. So
welcome.
So one of the things, I was just at HVMA, which is the Holistic Vet Conference, and a lot of vets came out of the animal biome talk, and they were very, very intrigued with the fact that one of the things that they're finding is that dogs who are on raw diets don't have a diverse enough diet, and that leads to a less diverse microbiome. And a lot of that comes from lack of food diversity in general, but especially lack of food diversity in plants. So we know that the more species that you introduce to a dog, the more types of fiber that are there, and the better growth you get with certain innate good microorganisms. So the study that I'm looking at to the side of the screen here talks about more than 30 plants versus less than 10 plants. So a really cool way to get a bunch of plants into your dog's diet and increase their good bacteria production would be to rotate between all of our blends. So you're going to get 17 different plants into the diet, which is a lot for not having to do very much work because we're doing the work for you. So we juice all those vegetables, add the pulp back, break down the cell walls so they can, further be digested. And then another great strategy for that you can do at home, which I think I do, and I think Kelly does as well, is I rotate between the 3 Green Juju blends. It's funny, I'm like going between all these. And I don't lose my train of thought, which is pretty good.
I think next year we need to up our tech.
Yes, so the tech budget. One of the things that I do is I rotate between all the blends and get those 17 different plants, but also we cook at home a lot. And so when we're cooking up different plant foods, colorful peppers, all that kind of stuff, I give those to Huckleberry all the time just to increase that side of the plant things, to be able to do that. So getting those in there is very, very important. Is there anything you want to add in on that, Kelly?
What we're doing with our blends is we're providing convenience. We're providing a blend that has been, developed by nutritionists, and we know that everything's in the right proportions. But something that you can do at home that's greatly beneficial is to incorporate seasonal ingredients. So whether that's through what you're cooking and, chopping up of leftovers of whatever vegetables you have, or, say you blend some seasonal ingredient into one of our blends that you feed. That's just another way to add more plants. And those, have we ever done anything on seasonal? I don't know.
I don't think so.
But feeding seasonally is fascinating, something we can do a whole nother topic on. But all of the plants that come within the season have different properties that are meant to benefit the body for that season. So whether it's in winter and it's helping the body to slow down and stay warm or whatever, in the spring to detoxify and get ready for warmer weather. But anyways, all that to say, incorporate seasonal ingredients. So you can chop that up and throw it in the bowl after you're cooking, or blend it into one of our blends, or that's just another way to get more plants in there and plants that will be seasonally beneficial.
And one of my favorite seasonal things to do right now is cranberries, because you can find them at the grocery store, and so I love adding organic cranberries to Huckleberry's food.
And dogs seem to like them.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and those are great. And all berries are going to offer different things. You can find blueberries at Bailey's Blend, and that's a great way. My daughter eats a lot of berries, and so Huckleberry gets a lot from her thrown on the ground, so that also works out well.
The most expensive part of having kids.
Yes, that is definitely true. So you just have to think about how we can add these in. But even if you're just doing the blends, and one of the things we're going to talk about in a second is adding the fermented food as well. So we can get some more diversity, say red cabbage versus green cabbage. Those are two different plants with different properties and antioxidant properties. So we're going to talk about the fermented sides, but even if you're just using the blends on that side, which really is the core of really what we're doing here at Green Juju, getting those 17 plants will be very exciting. And also, I know a lot of people who, like me, are into fall, are focusing right now on the did I just sound really basic when I said that? I'm really into fall. So
pumpkin spice and all.
So are really into the golden blend right now, with the squash and the golden beets, and it seems very harvest related. So I know I'm into that as well. So these are all ways you can do that. But also, a lot of times people don't mention just the enjoyment factor of it. Your dog wants to eat different things. I love to put Huckleberry's food on a flatter surface and separate things out so he can taste different things. Because I am really into the nutrition part, but I forget sometimes that it's about his enjoyment and what he likes to eat and what he doesn't like to eat. A good example of that, I was just talking to Kelly. There's a certain way I can, he didn't happen to prefer our milk fermented into a kefir because it was too tangy, so now I make him yogurt. So he is ridiculous. So it's one of those things to keep in mind as well. So we talked about the different plant diversity, so that's what's going to feed those bacteria. So now we want to talk about what bacteria we should be introducing. We have great products for introducing wonderful natural soil-based organisms and naturally occurring organisms in raw goat's milk. So one of the things is we want to increase the fiber in the diet, which we're going to do greatly with our blends, because studies show that there's measured increased microbiome function and also personalized immune responses, which means that your dog is going to have better immune responses when the immune system is functioning better because there's a better baseline of those microorganisms in the gut. So that is, I think, a really incredible way of looking at that, especially when you think about, your own health and, how our systems are. If you notice our post the other day, we're both dealing with young kids right now who are sick all the time and are constantly, their immune systems are being stressed.
We're sharing right now.
Exactly. And so it's one of those things where we also know, and this is kind of a cool thing that I think about a lot, every mammal that lives in your house, be it human, dog, or cat, shares microorganisms by virtue of living together. So I always say, if you're doing something healthy for your dog or cat, that could affect your health as well, which I think is can be really exciting to be able to do that. So we want more of those personalized immune responses. And the other part about that is, so we have the high fiber part, but now we know that diets that include more fermented foods are going to have increased microbiome diversity, and especially when you're looking at Green Juju's products. And the other cool thing, and I'll go over that in a second, but the other cool thing is that studies show now that there's actually a decreased inflammatory signals and activity. So fermented foods can decrease inflammation and increase microbiome diversity. So that happens, number one, if you're using BAM's beets or Lewis fermented golden paste, you're going to get those soil-based organisms. And so all we do is add sea salt to those products. So the probiotics that you're getting come from the beets and the purple cabbage or the turmeric itself. And they'll vary by pouch. So even if it's the same batch, you're going to get different levels of different bacteria in every one of those pouches, which to me really is the future of probiotics, is how do we vary those species up? And you're going to get a bunch of different species. So now you take something like that and you combine it with, say, our fermented, taking our goat's milk and fermenting it. So there's two different versions you can do here. The first one is you don't even have to ferment it. So you're going to get over 200 species of probiotics. So now you've taken our blends and added, let's say, Bam's Beats to that with our goat milk. You're going to get a couple hundred different naturally occurring species between those two products. And then as it sits in the fridge, let's say it takes you 2 weeks to get through that goat's milk, it's going to start to become sour and you're going to get more bacteria because those bacteria are going to grow. Or you can go ahead and ferment it and you're going to get those 200 species of bacteria plus whatever you're fermenting it with. So be it if you're using the Adored Beast products, which people have been, letting us know that they've been having a really great success with that, or if you're making a kefir out of our goat's milk, or if you're making, yogurt like I do, whatever you want to do with that. This is really an amazing way to be able to get the more fermented foods. So again, I want to reiterate, you can inoculate your dog's gut with our goat's milk, with Bam's Beats, with Lewis fermented golden paste, and then you can feed them with our blends. And I think that that's really unique to Green Juju, and I know it makes me feel good when I'm feeding Huckleberry and I put down, this is how I do it. You don't have to do it this way, and she'll probably laugh at me that this brings me so much joy. But I love putting the blends down. Like right now, I know he's eating Just Greens and Lewis fermented golden paste. I love putting the blends down and then putting the paste on top of the blends to form like this superfood. And two, I think it's a really indicative of what we've been able to do together with the company, so that's kind of cool as well. So Kelly, before we go to questions, is there anything you want to add to that?
I just want to say that if you couldn't tell, combining the microbiome and fermentation is like right up Billy's alley. He's just been on a roll here. So let's bring on the questions in case there was not time to get any in there.
That is true. So, and thank you to everyone who's saying hi. And it looks like we have people from all over the country, so that's always really exciting. Looks like Sonia's dog gets really excited about our treats, so that's really great. Beth says, do you feed the cranberries raw? Yeah, totally. I like to cut them in half. That's me, because a lot of dogs will just swallow them. But so that's, Julia said, I chop mine in a food processor. Yep, you could do that as well. You could chop your cranberries in a food processor and add them to the blends. You could just add it to the food, whatever you want to do there. It's a great way to do that. Chelsea says, classic Billy. I'll take it.
That's kind of an interesting comment. My dog runs hot, and I was told not to give him goat's milk. Plus, his proteins are restricted to duck and lamb. When you look at Chinese medicine and the energetic cooling properties of different proteins, duck is definitely cooling, but lamb is really hot. So those are on different ends of the spectrum. So obviously, every dog's an individual, and if that's what they do well with, that's what they do well with. But some other cooling or neutral proteins you might want to look at are rabbit or bison or even beef as neutral. But working with a holistic vet or a good acupuncturist can be amazing in helping to determine those type of energetic patterns and what is best for your dog.
That is true. And I will also add as well that if you're working with raw milk on the energetic side of things, according to my friend Judy Morgan, fermentation actually cools down. As a processing aid, it's a cooling processing aid. So you may want to try the fermented version of our raw milk if you're worried about that on that side of things. to be able to do that. So, and also too, like she said, it really does just depend on the dog. So, a lot of times it's just about trying to see what works, and kind of going from there to be able to do that. Yeah, I think pork is a really great cooling protein.
Someone over here just said, are the freeze-dried greens as beneficial? I think that our freeze-dried greens are, I'd always go with fresh, like fresh over freeze-dried. However, the freeze-dried greens have metals in them, which we aren't able to put in the fresh version. And so I think that I would say that they're comparable. I would rotate between the two of them. There's obviously the convenience of the freeze-dried in terms of travel and everything. But nutrient-wise, there isn't a significant difference. I just have this principle in my head that life feeds life, and I like to feed fresh food. But the freeze-dried, it doesn't have since we don't heat it, you're not losing nutrients.
Yes.
You know exactly. That totally box.
No, I think those of you looking for, relief from seasonal itching and general things that are sort of affected by histamines, I think the nettles in the Just Greens blend is a great way to do that, and also is a wonderful option if you're traveling or camping or anything like that, to get all of that nutrition in a much more usable format under that circumstance.
We've seen a lot of improvement in itchy dogs with the nettles and the Just Greens.
Yes, and we love when people give us feedback on the products. So we've had a lot of people reach out in those circumstances. So please continue to do that, because it really does help us. We develop the products and get them out there, and we have an idea of what's going to happen with them. But that feedback is really valuable, because we can see that on a much larger scale when you guys start feeding this stuff. So that really helps us out. So thank you for being a part of that process. We really appreciate that. So keep the questions coming. It looks like we've been on here for about 27 minutes. So Vicki says she's having a little trouble finding the products in Northern Alabama. I know of one store, and I know this because my in-laws live in Northern Alabama, in Huntsville, and there's a store called Pets Love and Happiness in Huntsville. So that's the best I can do off the top of my head. But shout out to Pets Love and Happiness. I once did a talk there, and only my in-laws and their friends showed up to it. So they learned a lot about pet nutrition that day.
Celebrity.
Yeah, I do what I can.
We have been working on updating our store locator and making sure that it is updated, and not only updated, but with the actual products that store carries. So if you haven't been on there recently, check it out, because it should be as accurate as we are able to keep it with monthly reports.
Exactly. Sonia mentioned a good point here. She actually ferments our milk with a yogurt called Cocoa Yo, which you can find at the grocery store. And she said that's
so many new flavors.
That stuff is amazing. That's like Maple's favorite thing. So if you get the regular Cocoa Yo there and put about a tablespoon per quart in her goat's milk, you'll get a nice ferment off that. But the really cool thing about that is you only need to buy the Cocoa Yo once, because then just use your quart the next time you thaw one out and pour some of that into the next quart. And as you do that, the cultures will become more acclimated into growing, so you'll get a little bit thicker and thicker product as time goes on. But and they get a really good ferment on that Cocoa Yo. Sometimes it comes out of the packaging or out of the bottle a little bit. It rises, so it's a really good way to you can make some yogurt and get some extra nutrition from that coconut that's going in there as well. So Sonia says, did you make it to the Bark Avenue thing in Texas last week? I had a last minute conflict and couldn't make it to meet you. How dare you, first of all. I did make it to Bark Avenue. I had a really good time in Texas last week with our distributor Supreme and working with retail stores. It does look like I'll be back in Texas coming up in January doing some events and stuff. So um, it looks, if you're in Austin, Houston, or Dallas, it looks like I'll be coming soon to a store near you. So look for that on social media. And he says, I'm aware that some pups aren't into fermented or their body doesn't love it. My pup won't eat any of your blends. Do you think that's the case, or do you have any tricks that will work? Well, our blends are not fermented, unless you're talking about the unless you're talking about Bam Speeds or Lewis Fermented Golden Paste. So, Kelly, do you have any tricks and tips on how to get your dog, finicky dog, to eat the blends?
Yeah, so our kind of gold standard is just to always start slow and mix in like thoroughly to the meal. So we'll start with, I don't know how big the dogs are, but maybe even a quarter teaspoon, like super tiny. I know people that have even just started with the juice. And if your dog hasn't had vegetables before or any type of plants, this may just be a really foreign taste to them. And so it takes, a period of time for them to get used to it. What we find most commonly is that people will kind of sneak it into the bowl, and then over, maybe a course of a week or two, they end up actually going for the greens first. Like they develop a taste for it. I noticed this with myself personally years ago. When I first started drinking green juice, I switched from Diet Coke to green juice, and all of a sudden my body just wanted green juice. So we've seen that with dogs as well. That is my recommendation for like the slow intro, even if you start with the juice. If you get past, trying for a week or two and it's still just not happening, yeah, you can definitely add in some bone broth, some goat's milk, anything else that they like that's enticing to them. But I also agree with, if dogs kind of know what they need. If they're really, really not into it, I wouldn't force it. But I do think that it's worth giving it a week or two of trying.
Yeah, and I think too, I think the bone broth is a really good suggestion. I think, and someone asked the question, if your dog has never really had dairy, do I need to go slow with the introduction to your goat milk? It really depends on the dog, but there's no drawback to going slow. So that's really nice to be able to do that. If a dog has been raw fed for a long time, usually milk won't really be hard to transition to. It is, arguably the most digestible food on the planet, and so that helps as well, especially if you go ahead and ferment it. But even if you don't, it's made to be digested by biology and evolution, so that's a good thing. So if you're worried about it, I would just start slow for a week or two and then kind of introduce from there. But if your dog's like my dog, who kind of eats something different all the time, then you can kind of just kind of throw it in whenever you want to, or to do that. And the other great thing about adding things like a lot of bone broth and milk is obviously on the nutritional end, but also on the hydrating end. I have a dog that's just over a year old, and so I'm not feeding a senior dog anymore, but I'm still looking at his long-term kidney health, his long-term pancreas health, and I want to be adding these bioavailable high moisture foods so he can this is Maple's, my daughter's dog, so I have to keep him healthy for like 50 years. So that's kind of how we look at that. Let's look more at preventative than we do at that. So Vicky, I'm glad you love Pets, Love and Happiness in Huntsville, Alabama. I might be there over Thanksgiving, so if you see me driving around or something, make sure you wave.
On the store not carrying the whole line, that if they carry any of our products, they should be able to special order whatever it is that you want. So just, and this applies to any store that carries our products, just try asking if they can order what you're looking for.
And we do understand that space is hard for retailers, so it's we like to get in as much as we can. Be sure to remind the owner that Green Juju is the best whole food supplement company on the planet. and that every store should have, as many products as possible. At least in my
Right,
opinion.
freezer.
Yeah, it's totally fine. So Russell says, can you over ferment for your dog's gut? Um, not really in the way that we're advocating for this. So
When you do it with whole foods, not really, but you could over supplement potentially.
yeah, the amount of things you add could work better or worse for your dog, based on their own digestion and what works for them in terms of food. But when you're fermenting the milk like we're advocating for, you're doing the natural ferment. These are ways that are biologically already adapted to your dog's digestive system. So it's not like we're making wine here or beer or something like that. So it's hard to overdo it, in a general sense, because they're really milder, if that makes sense. But um, the amount of fermented products is going to depend on what works for your dog. So, for instance, you might want to do regular milk, regular raw milk with the fermented blends, or you might want to do both fermented. It just depends on what works for your dog. I think there was a good question over
Well,
here, too.
Angela just asked, are you going to make the goat's milk available online? And we just launched that and the freeze-dried blends this week. So as of this week, you can order the goat's milk or different bundles of our blends and our fermented paste together. So go on and check out what options we have.
Yes, so the answer to your question is yes, and you get an instant gratification because it's available right now. Dina says, I think in one of your videos you mentioned adding something to the milk to make it lactose free. What was the ingredient? Yes, you can make the goat's milk lactose free, and it's very, very easy. So if you go to our website and you go to click on the raw goat's milk section, there's a video there, and I explain exactly what that is. I'll talk about that in a second, but you can have a version of it where you can actually see what the product is. The product that we used in our research was called Milk Aid. So anytime you go to the grocery store and buy lactose-free actual dairy, they're just adding the lactase enzyme to it, and lactase breaks down lactose sugars. So you get Milk Aid, and you put 10 drops of that per pint, and leave it in your fridge for 24 hours, and then you have lactose-free whole raw milk. So you get all the other benefits without the actual lactose. So for a smaller group of dogs, or a group that needs to be basically no sugars, say you're doing a ketogenic diet or something, that would be advantageous to do that. And it's really easy. It's very similar to the fermentation process and how you execute it. So go check out the video on our website, and all of that will become very easy and apparent. Yeah, I wanted to see. There was one up here that was. Carrie says, can dogs get too much goat's milk? I get a lot of senior fosters. Some have major issues. Try and get their gut right first. I do feed a raw diet and rotate all of your products and proteins. Well, thank you for that, Carrie. Really appreciate that. You can't really do too much goat milk. You just have to work within the amount of calories you're doing. So goat's milk is 20 calories an ounce. So you can do too much in terms of calorically, but it's a really complete food. So just kind of work that into whatever they need to be able to do that.
So I don't know what freezable baby food jars are, but I would like to know. But in terms of dividing it up, what we usually recommend people do is to refreeze into ice cube trays or like those silicone mold ice cubes, and then just store them in the freezer and pull out an ice cube as needed and thaw that. So it's a good way to, also if you're buying the blends, it's a good way to buy the larger size and get a better value and just freeze them and use as needed.
I think I know what you're talking about because I think I have
Freezable
those.
baby jars?
Yeah, I think
glass?
they're glass. Yeah, I have
What?
those. Yep, she says they're made of glass. I have those.
Okay, I need the link.
Penny.
Please.
So, Penny also said, thank you for making such incredible products. Well, you are welcome. And I think that that's probably what is, we'll do this question here. I'm sponsoring a rescue who rescued from severe neglect. What's the best product I can ship? Any ideas on that, Kelly?
What do we see? I am sponsoring a rescue. Severe neglect. What's the best product I can ship? Well, we have all of our products available on our website. I guess what specifically are we looking to target?
I mean, I think if you could do, a frozen product, I think the goat's milk would be a good option, just because of its base of nutrition. If you're talking about the dog was neglected and is like deficient in nutrients, but side note, Penny, We Sprout is the exact brand I have, so we are connected, and she's missing out. So,
I would also for the neglect dog. I mean, aside from their base diet, I would also add bone broth and some of the freeze-dried bites because those are so palatable. They're easy to get in and they're really nutrient dense. And then the bone broth is also nutrient dense and easy to get in. So those would be my additions as well.
Absolutely. Joyce says, my 15-pound dog doesn't drink water after having your duck bone broth and goat's milk and the fermented blends, I think. She gets 1 ounce of goat's milk with 3 ounces of water twice a day. Here's the thing. If you're feeding a raw diet and you're also feeding especially bone broth and goat's milk, you don't really have to worry about how much water your dog is drinking. They're going to drink way less water. So no need to, in my opinion, specifically add water or anything. You can if you want to. It's not going to be obviously detrimental to that. But this is a question people get a lot. Have a lot. Their dog switches to a raw diet and they drink a lot less water. That makes sense because raw food is like between 60 and 70% moisture. So you're going to get more moisture through that, and especially goat's milk, which is much higher in moisture, and bone broth, which is like 96% moisture or something.
It's just like the difference of us like eating crackers and drinking a glass of water or eating a bowl of soup. Like you're already getting all of the moisture in the soup or in the bone broth and goat's milk, so you just don't need to add it on the side. And same with raw diet.
Like if you had a giant bowl of pho in Seattle last night, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I did not even make a dent in that.
Yeah, we both had it. So, Kathy says, did you say I can make yogurt using your milk and a small amount of cocoa? I did. So, if you've watched our video on our website, all you have to do is the same process. Just put about a tablespoon of that yogurt in a quart of our milk, leave it on your counter for 24 hours, and you are good to go.
Diane on Instagram, this is new as of 2 days ago. So yes, check it out.
Yes, check out our website for many. If you don't have a store near you and need to order our products, or you just want some great information, our website is the place to be.
And I will tell you, shipping across the coast is expensive. We don't charge for materials, labor, dry ice, anything. It's purely just UPS. So if you have a store close to you, you're going to save a lot on shipping. So go to the store locator first and see it. Even if they don't carry the exact product you want, see if they can order the product you want. That will save you a lot. But if you are nowhere near a store, then we do have options for you.
Yes. So I'm going to take one last question, and then you can think about if there's any last thing you want to say. So is there such thing as giving too much turmeric paste? I would start, it is just food, which is really great. So it's a whole food supplement. It's not like you're, taking medicine or something like that. But I would definitely start with the recommended dose and just see, how that works for your dog, whether you're trying to abate symptoms of, inflammation or joints or whatever you're using that for. And then you can always move up from there, but it's really concentrated because of the fermentation, so you don't have to do a lot. So, I myself have a tendency when it comes to functional foods for my own dog and be like, I want to do a ton of this, but a lot of times it's starting at the smaller amount because those things can be concentrated to be able to do that. So, Kelly, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Just wanted to respond to Joyce, who keep going. She has a raw diet but wants bone broth after walks. So bone broth is really high in electrolytes. It's basically like a natural version of Gatorade. I'm really big on dogs knowing how to take care of themselves and knowing what they need, and it's our job to offer, and they take what they need. So I think your dog is probably really smart and went on a walk and needs to recharge on some electrolytes, and I think that's great. And then somebody else just asked if there's going to be a replay. So yeah, we'll post these on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so you can find us all over the place to watch us all over again.
Whatever your desired platform is, we will be there. So I would like to say one last thing and give a shout out to all of our amazing retailers, all of our independent pet stores all over the country. It is truly you guys who make what we do possible, and you have these amazing connections with your customers and allow us to do what we do, which I know we both love. So thank you so much for that, and thank you guys for feeding our products and trusting us with your pet's nutrition. So, it's one of those things where it is a real privilege and honor to be able to feed your, animals and get better health outcomes to being able to do it. So thank you so much for trusting us. I know we both appreciate that a lot. So we will be back next month with a live, or I will be back, I should say. We have a very special live next month as well with one of my favorite people in the industry. Her name is Carol. She owns a company.
Excuse me.
One of my favorite, not my favorite person in the industry, one of my favorite people in the industry. Her name is Carol, and she runs a company called Mind Pet Platter. So I'm excited to have a conversation with her next month. But have a great Halloween, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, guys.